Just to begin with, can you recall the very first time you sat behind a pedal steel guitar, and was it love at first sight?
The first time I sat behind the pedal steel guitar, well, I started taking guitar lessons on lap steel, which was, the earliest thing, when I was 6 years old. So that was 1952. And at that time, they hadn't invented pedal steel guitars yet. But they had big double and triple neck guitars, steel guitars. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 6, I started off on lap steel. You just put it on your lap and you play. And I still play it today, even on stage, lap steel. And that was the beginning for me. And then in Denver, Colorado, you couldn't get a pedal steel. Then I played like a triple. I have pictures of me playing, these big triple neck steel guitars where they have 3 different necks in, like one after the other. And then in the early 60s, Fender started making pedal steel guitars, and I could get one then. And so I got my first Fender 1000. I think it was 1960, maybe 61. And that was the beginning of playing, like a fairly modern pedal steel guitar.
For a non-musician like myself, it looks like a difficult instrument to master. Is that pretty much how it is?
It is. Yeah, it's pretty difficult. But piano is hard, I think. But it is difficult, and there are a lot of guys who can play it but don't play it very well, which is really the key to the whole how hard it is thing. It's not an easy instrument. The technique part is really difficult, and people struggle with that. And the idea of the pedal, the way it works with the pedals that you push, mm-hmm. and it has knee levers that you push, is pretty complicated. So it's not the easiest instrument, that's for sure. There are a lot of bad guitar players around.
Now, the inspiration for playing the pedal steel through a Leslie speaker, which is normally used for a Hammond B3 organ, which you're well known for, where did that eventuate?
Well, when I was growing up, I started giving guitar lessons when I was about 14. And this place in Denver, Colorado, Don Edwards Guitar City. And in that he hired a few, it was like the biggest steel guitar place in the Midwest, where people, like when guys are coming from Nashville to L.A., they'd always stop in Denver, and they'd usually come by the steel players that come by Don Edwards' shop and get the repairs or whatever they needed for their guitars. So it was there's a lot of traffic through there of well-known, touring steel guitarists. And there was a guy there. There were a few guys that worked there besides me. And there was a guy who was my mentor called Donnie Buzzard. And Donnie showed me that you didn't have to play, steel guitar didn't have to play just, country music, that it could play other things. And we used to sit around playing jazz. And he did it through, he started experimenting, or he showed me how to play through, like the voice box, that Peter Frampton made famous.
Oh, yeah.
We were playing that in the early 60s through steel guitar, because it was actually first a steel guitar instrument. Alvino Ray, a famous steel player from the 40s and 50s, was the first one to use that. So it was something that we were kicking around. And he also showed me, playing through a Leslie, and he showed me playing with, like, you could use different things like a comb, a hair comb. You could put that on. You use that instead of a metal bar and get a really cool sound. And I used that on the first Poco album. I played some stuff with a comb on the steel, and just anything. He really tutored me on what you could do with steel guitar. And because I was a teenager, I was like 16 when at the height of all this kind of stuff, and the Beatles were hitting, and Jimi Hendrix and rock and roll. So I was anxious to plug a fuzz device, an overdrive, into my steel guitar and play and imitate Jimi Hendrix. And actually, I think I was maybe 17. My local band had a record contract, and somehow the record company got tied up with the movie industry, and they were making a movie called Psych Out. And the big star in the movie was a brand new guy, first starring role. His name was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And it was a movie about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And anyway, they wanted Jimi Hendrix to play Purple Haze in their soundtrack. And in a bit of good taste, he declined. And so somehow it came to me, and they said, we need a Purple Haze kind of song. So I played on this, and you can still find it, that soundtrack. I played Purple Haze backwards on steel guitar with an overdrive device on my steel guitar. And that was way, way early in the whole game of using steel guitar, as a different kind of instrument other than just, hardcore country.
Wow. So, I'll have to look that one up. That's incredible. Now,
that's the story. Yeah, you can find it.
It's well documented. You're the only person to have played on every Poco recording and played at every Poco gig since day number one. I'm guessing that's an achievement that you carry proudly.
Yes, I do. And I'm proud of the band today, and I'm proud of the music we've made all along. The thing about Poco is that we've always had great musicians. We've been really fortunate, and we've always had great musicians from the very beginning. When we put the band together, it was me, Jimmy Messina, and Richie Furay, and we had done a Buffalo Springfield track together, the three of us. And they wanted to start a new band, but they didn't know any other musicians, so I got Randy Meisner, who came from Colorado. Well, actually came from Nebraska, but played in Colorado in local bands that I'd played with. And George Grantham, the drummer that was in the band that I was in Colorado when I left to do the Poco thing. So I got Randy and George, and the five of us started the first Poco, and it was a great band. It made history at the Troubadour, although history doesn't reflect it, but it really did. It was a historic thing. On any given night, Ricky Nelson was there all the time, but you'd see Waylon Jennings, George Harrison. The list just went on, and the writer for the LA Times, the music writer, said that Poco was the next big thing, and it was quite an exciting time.
So it was always going to be Randy and George to fill those final two spots? There was no audition process or anything like that?
No. Well, no, we did. We auditioned all kinds of. We auditioned Greg Allman. I mean,
oh, wow.
We needed a rhythm section, and that was a bass player and drummer. You had to have that. We didn't have that in the beginning. And so, like I say, Jimmy and Richie didn't really know anybody. Mostly, we were just auditioned a few bass players, but I don't think I remember Dewey Martin, who was the drummer in the Buffalo Springfield, wanted to be the drummer in the band, but that would have been too weird. And so I got George out there right off the bat. I had George and Randy in mind right off the bat, so they came in pretty early. But then we kept auditioning other people to help Richie fill out the vocal side. And Graham Parsons, played with us before he joined the Byrds. He came over and rehearsed for quite a while. And Greg Almond was another one who came and rehearsed. And Greg was awesome. That's where he and I became friends. And there were a few folks that came by and auditioned, but what happens when you become a big star like Richie was in Buffalo Springfield, you don't really know. You only know people who are successful and not people who are looking for work. So he and Jimmy didn't really have a long line of people who were anxious to join a band with Richie.
Tell us about the legal issue that arose with the band name, because you were initially meant to be named Pogo. There's a Pogo comic strip, which we don't know too much about down here in Australia. How serious of a threat was that legal action?
Well, we had to change the name. We couldn't decide on a name. Richie wanted to call the band the, what was it? Electric something. I can't forget. Jimmy wanted to call it Pepperbox Flintlock Pepperbox. That's and these are hard to remember. The Erector Set. That's what Richie's name was. And so we would drop names, which totally sucked. We would drop names in a hat when we played at the Troubadour, and pull a name. Our manager would pull a name out, and that would be the name we play under that week. And so, which was a really brilliant idea, because no one would ever know we were playing there, because we changed names every week. But our manager looked like a cartoon character who was named Pogo. He was a little short guy with real curly, frizzy hair, and he put Pogo in the hat one night, and we drew that name out of the hat. So we played as Pogo that week, and as it turns out, all the record labels, we were real hot, so all the record labels were down there that week. They sent their A&R guys to come check us out, and so on the following Monday, we had all these offers. We had like half a dozen offers from different labels for Pogo, and so we were pretty much stuck with that name, we thought, and the labels were saying things. Oh yeah, we can use Pogo sticks as you remember Pogo sticks?
Yeah.
Marketing device and all. They thought that was great. So anyway, we were playing the Anaheim Convention Center, opening for somebody, I don't remember who. And at sound check, this guy with a suit walks on and hands us a stack of papers and says that Walt Kelly, who was the guy that drew that comic strip, was suing us for the name. And I think it was because at the time, the Archies had a big hit. And, that's also a cartoon. And I think Walt Kelly was trying to hold on to his rights to have a rock group. I don't know. But so we had to change it. So we decided that, if we changed the G to a C, my high school Spanish came in there. I knew that Pogo was a word in Spanish that meant little. And, I thought, well, Pogo, why not? So we ended up changing it. We thought maybe no one would notice it was a G instead of a C, but at least people would still know it was us. And so we had to change it. Otherwise, we would have been sued, and we did.
And in those early stages in particular, was radio airplay a bit of a problem? Were you caught in that zone between rock and country, like too rock for country, too country for rock? Was that an issue at any time?
That's what Richie says. I have a different take on it. I just think that it would have been there if the right song would have been there. And I think the Eagles are the perfect example. Take It Easy was the perfect song for what we were doing, the country rock thing. It had great lyrics. The track was great. It sounded like us. Our engineer at the time thought that it was us. We came in the studio and he said, I just heard a song of yours on the radio. And we said, well, that's not us. They took what we were doing. I mean, Glenn Fry and J.D. Souther were an opening act for us at the Troubadour. And those guys soaked it all in, and they just did it better. I think they did a great job. And Take It Easy, if we'd have recorded Take It Easy and released it, it would have been a hit for us. But of course, they had Randy Meisner singing, and by that time, we didn't. So I don't think that's. I mean, you can call that an issue, and I'm not sure that that's fair. I just think it was that we didn't have that song, and they did. Eagles had great singing, great playing, great song, and that's not something we had all three of.
Yeah. Now, you had your first lineup change pretty much around the time of the first album with Randy leaving. Was that unsettling at such an early stage in the band's existence?
Oh, it destroyed the band. I mean, Richie managed to do that right in the very beginning. It was really important. Randy was a very important part of the band, and Richie, I think, my thought is that Richie, we auditioned different bass players, and one of them was Timothy B. And Timothy sent a letter after that when we decided I pushed hard for Randy and to Richie saying, thanks for all this, and really endeared himself to Richie. And I think Richie wanted Timothy in the band from that moment on. And so he was just kind of looking for a way to get rid of Randy. And so he made it impossible for Randy to stay in the band. And he did the same thing with Jimmy Messina. But the band was his band because he was the star of the band and he was the reason people were interested in us. And he knew he had control. And so he used that, and he made giant mistakes. He's made huge mistakes, I think, for a long time. But when he made Randy quit the band, Clive Davis, who had signed us, just flipped out because he had just signed this band, and right off the bat, the band loses, a key member. And so the enthusiasm at the record label just went down the tubes because all of a sudden they weren't so excited about the band. And, it was a really bad period. But then, a year later, it was the same thing with Jimmy. And I think, Jimmy's my best friend from the band. And the fact that he and I were really close, we roomed together on the road, the two of us. And we thought about the songs, and he engineered it, and I helped with him arranging the songs, and it was really an important part, and we did things that Richie couldn't do. And I think it was a control issue. But so when Richie let Jimmy go too, it was really devastating. Although Timothy's a great guy, he's a really great guy and got a great voice and all that kind of stuff. He's not Randy Meisner. They're different players and singers, but he's a great guy. And Paul Cotton was good. And the thing about it, Paul joining the band was the Eagles and Poco were going through a similar thing. We were all touring with English bands, like we toured with Yes and just all kinds of English acts. So Yes is the one that stands out. And so we wanted to be more rock and roll because, that seemed to be where the success was. So we wanted a hard rock and roll guitar player. And Paul Cotton was more like that than Jimmy. And the Eagles did the same thing. They brought in Don Felder, who was a rock and roll guitar player where Bernie Leadon wasn't. So that was kind of what was in the air. So, the Paul Cotton thing, and Paul's got a great voice and is a great songwriter, wasn't so much of a disaster, even though I think, Jimmy's brilliant and it would have been great if he could have stayed in the band. And obviously it proved, look what happened to Randy. He ended up in the Eagles, take it to the limit. And, there you go, Richie. And Jimmy, with Long as a Messina, ended up hugely successful. And so it was better for their careers that Richie fired them. So, things work out the way they're supposed to, I guess.
With Jim's departure from the band and later on Richie himself leaving the band, did you feel a responsibility to keep the band going and not let it lay down, particularly as they were major songwriting contributors to the band?
Well, yeah, Randy wasn't really a songwriter. Jimmy wrote a little bit. He'd give a song or two to an album. And when Timothy came in and Richie was still in the band, Timothy was good for maybe 2 songs an album. They weren't real prolific. And Richie wasn't either. That's why the second album had, one whole side was an instrumental. It was a song that, went 18 minutes and was mostly instrumental. So when Richie left, Richie was the guy, and so that was pretty tough. And we'd gone through a lot with him, letting it be the Richie, Furet, Poco, and so it was tough. And it was at a time when it seemed like he was really deserting us, because we were a family, and especially since he was going to Souther Hill and Furet. And I knew Souther pretty well, and I knew in that band they had Jimmy Gordon was the drummer, and I had done a lot of sessions with Jimmy Gordon, and I knew who he was, and I just thought, boy, Richie, what are you getting into? You have no clue who these people are. It's not a family like Poco was. We all lived together in Colorado, and we left the Hollywood, LA scene for Colorado, and we were really a family, and I thought that was a huge mistake. But at the same time, it was a great moment for me, because what happened was we left Colorado, we got a call. David Geffen was managing us. Got a call to go to LA and have a big meeting. And I had already heard what was going to happen. I'd already heard rumors in Colorado about, because Chris Hillman lived in Colorado too, about what was going down. And so I kind of knew. And so we're in David Geffen's office in LA. And we walk in and with Richie, and Richie had already said there's no way he'd ever leave the band. He told me that personally, that I'm not leaving the band ever, which made sense. And so we're in the office, and he walks in, and Geffen corrals him and takes him into his separate part of the office. And Geffen comes out, and 4 of us are sitting on the couch. It's Paul Cotton, Timothy B. Schmidt, me, and George Grantham. And he says, all right, Richie's quitting the band. and he said, looked at Paul Cotton, and he said, listen, you write songs and you sing, right? And then Paul said, yes. And he said, well, don't worry, Richie's leaving, but you'll be just fine. And he went to Tim, and he said, you sing and you write songs, don't you? And he said, well, Richie's leaving, but you'll be just fine. And then he came to me. And at the time I was on the cover of Guitar Player magazine. I was, the most successful steel guitar player of all time. And, I was doing lots. I played on sessions for everyone from Three Dog Night to Gladys Knight. I was just really in demand as a musician. He looked at me and he said, you don't sing and you don't write, do you? And I said, no. And he said, well, you're in trouble. So I realized at that moment that the people that were really important in the industry were the people who wrote songs and sang. So at that moment, the light bulb went off, and since Richie was gone, we could use another songwriter. We needed another songwriter because Tim and Paul wouldn't write enough songs to fill an album. At the time, we were, responsible for 2 albums a year to Columbia, and so it was a terrific opportunity for me. And I'd been so involved in the song arranging and creating that it was not a huge step. And I had great teachers around me. I mean, I sat in Richie's house and listened to Neil Young, just him and me by the fireplace when he played his whole first album. And, and guys in America were friends of mine. And so I had great people helping me learn how to write songs. And so it was a great opportunity for me. And it's like a tree. When you trim a tree, it gives opportunity for other branches to grow. And that was my opportunity. So it was a really fortunate thing. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad he quit. And if he hadn't, who knows, Crazy Love might not have come around. And, that's what's kept Poco alive for all these years.
Well, that's right. The wonderful irony of all that is that the two most commercially successful songs from the band are songs that you've written, Crazy Love and Rose of Cimarron, which both written by you. That's a prime example, I guess, of the unpredictable nature of the music business, isn't it?
I think it's really amazing having all those great singers and writers in the band, from Randy to Jimmy to Paul to Richie. The first time we have a big, number one hit, the only time we have a number one hit and sell 1 million records or more is the guy who only played steel guitar, didn't sing and didn't write. So that's pretty ironic. And I think hopefully it's inspirational to other musicians,
Now, of those 2 songs, the bigger one here in Australia was actually Rose of Cimarron. What do you recall of the writing of that song?
That's actually the biggest song in our catalog because worldwide that was a really big song. Actually, we were on the road and I was in which state? It wasn't Arizona, New Mexico, I think, or Arizona. I'm not sure. But at hotels and airports, they have these big wooden holders that have cards in them, or brochures, that's the word, in them of different things that you can go see as a tourist. And I was looking through one of those while we were checking into a hotel, and they had this one that the headline was Rose of Cimarron, and I picked it up and I thought, boy, how beautiful those words are. And I looked at it and it was about this, woman back in the 1800s, and she had taken in outlaws and this kind of thing. It was a really neat story. And so I wrote that down in my journal and decided, that needs to be a song. And so I worked on it a bit, and then I got a call from a friend. I'm not going to remember his name now. He was there's a show called The Rockford Files, and he played the sidekick to the lead. And he was Angel. I'll think of his name before this is over. But anyway, he produced a lot of stuff. And he called me up, and he was producing a Roy Rogers new album. And Roy hadn't done an album in a long time. And Roy was the lead singer in the Sons of the Pioneers, which was one of my favorites growing up. They were the original Crosby, Stills and Nash. They had, all 3-part harmony and just beautiful. I don't know if you're familiar with like Tumbling Tumbleweeds and Cool, Cool Water. And
oh, yeah.
those songs. Yeah, they were awesome. So I thought Rosa Cimarron would be perfect for Roy, and so I finished the song, and I thought, maybe if he could do it a little more modern, he could do those lyrics are kind of really, Sons of the Pioneer lyrics, and you could do it 3-part, and if you did it as a more modern song, and this was 1976. It would be really cool. So they invited me down, and I got to meet Roy in the studio, and I played it for him and all that kind of stuff. But Roy ended up not wanting to do an album, so I had that song, and I really loved the song, and I kept playing it for people, and they all loved it, and I played it for the band, and they loved it. So it turned. I said, well, let's cut it, and it turned into the title tune to that album, and I'm really proud of those are the two songs. Crazy Love and Rosa Cimarron are the two best things I've done, I think.
If you had your time over again, do you think you may have pursued the songwriting side of yourself a little earlier than when you did?
Well, the deal was that I had a job in the band, and in the bands that I played in even before that, the local bands, my job was, because I play I play banjo and mandolin and dobro and steel guitar, and my job was, the concept for Poco was that we were going to have the Richie Furay songs and lyrics, rock and roll songs and lyrics, but the surrounding music would be country, and make the country part fit into that in a way that it all worked together, rock and country. And my job was to be the country part, to play the steel guitar and the dobro, and to bring my influences into the arrangements. And so that was my job, and it was an important job. And so I never really thought about songwriting. I enjoyed Richie's songwriting and Paul's and Tim's, and I think Tim's a great songwriter. And and in the band, we had 3 songwriters. We had Jimmy and Richie and Tim, or Randy, and then we had Paul and Richie and Tim. And so 3 songwriters, singer-songwriters in one band is about all you can take. They didn't need any more. So that's why when the opportunity with Richie leaving was perfect, it was the perfect time, and I'd learned a lot by then.
Now, there have been occasions through the years where the original lineup has reunited. How do you look back on those times now?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be a lot of fun when we did the Legacy album, but the people don't change, and the old problems were still there. I mean, Richie would only tour for like 6 weeks behind, to promote the album, and he would desert us on certain occasions that were high profile, big label things, and he would not show up. And he's as usual, he was a real problem, and the rest of us had to try and carry on. I mean, we toured Europe without Richie. We did a lot of touring we toured Japan without Richie, just because he failed to make the call. I think there were problems with that, because when you put it together in the late 1980s, I'd had a #1 hit, Jimmy'd had a #1 hit, Randy'd had a huge monster hit, and then there was Richie. And I don't think he ever got over the fact that it was like that. I mean, we went on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and with Jay Leno both, and they have this little chart thing that producer comes out with, and they we said, well, we're going to do a medley, and we would do this medley of Take It to the Limit, Your Mama Don't Dance, Crazy Love, and then Richie's song was Kind Woman, which is a great song. And they look at the chart, they look at their papers, and on the charts, Take It to the Limit, #1 for how many weeks, and Your Mama Don't Dance and Crazy Love, #1 for 6 weeks. And then they get to Kind Woman, and it was never a chart record. It never made the charts. And so they'd say, okay, you can do it, but you can't, we don't want that song, Kind Woman. So we'd play on that show, and we'd do Call It Love, Crazy, Your Mama Don't Dance, and Take It to the Limit, and Richie wouldn't have a song. And I think that was hard for him to swallow, and I understand that. And so I think that made the whole experience of doing the reunion difficult for him.
I've always felt that Poco didn't achieve the full recognition it deserved for its role as a pioneer, I guess, of the country rock genre, or what they call today Americana. Has that been a concern for you over the years?
Oh, it's true. I think that's really true. I mean, they just did a thing on, there's this big movie on Laurel Canyon, and we lived there, and we played at the Troubadour. You know, we were the house band there, which was the most, influential club in L.A., and we were such a big part of that whole Laurel Canyon scene, and we were not even mentioned. And so, but that's typical. We're not regarded in the way that is historically correct. But there you go. It's a lesson learned.
Now, a few years ago, you announced your retirement, but it didn't last long. What changed your mind?
Yeah, I'm pretty retired now. Well, no, actually, what happened was, I was going to retire. I was thinking about, it's time to let it go, and I wanted to do just fun things with my friends. And so Jimmy Messina called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going out to do a West Coast tour. You want to come out and play?" And the shows I do with Jimmy are really, really fun. I do a Crazy Love and Rose and all that kind of stuff by myself. And then I joined Jimmy and I played on a few of the Logs Messina records back in the day. And so I do that, and we do You Better Think Twice, which is a Poco song. And then we do some Logs Messina stuff that I played on. And that's a lot of fun. It's a really good show. And I love Jimmy dearly. And so I said, sure. And I went out, and that's what I was going to focus on. And I went out and did that. And at one of the shows, after the show, a guy came up to me and he said, my name is Kurt, and I have a label called Blue Lawn. And have you ever considered doing a solo record? And, after all these years, 50 years, I'd never done a solo record. And everybody else in the band had done lots of them. And I thought, it's tough. If I'm going to leave any legacy at all about what my part was in Poco, what part I played, this is my chance to show my influence on the sound of the band. If you think Richie Ferrier was the only thing that was Poco, or if you think, somebody else was Timothy was, the whole thing, it was a band. We all, had contributed to it. And, so I called him up, and Kurt Pace, and I said, Kurt, you know what? I'll do it. And it took me I have a few songs, but it took me about 6 or 8 months to finish writing the album. And I did it here in Missouri at the cabin that we lived in. And we recorded it in Nashville at Johnny Cash's studio, where he recorded his stuff in the end. And I love the album. I'm really, really proud of it. And I think it really shows, it really gives a clue about, the difference that I made in Poco. And I'm proud that I can leave that legacy, and very, very happy with it. So then I had to go out and promote the record. So that brought me back out of thinking about retiring. And these days, I've enjoyed it so much that, we have shows on the book later this year. And, I'm an old guy. I'm 75 now. But I enjoy it so much. And I love the fans. They're loyal fans that come to see us every time. And they're friends, too. And I really, really enjoy touring. I've only done, my whole life, all I've done is play music. I started, like I said, when I was 6. And I was playing in Colorado bars when I was 12. And it's all I've ever done. And this year especially brings it home, because going a whole year without playing music is something I've never done in my life. And I really miss it. And I'm anxious to get back out there and play with my friends. And we've got a great band now. With Jack Sundred, our bass player, has been in the band since 1985. He's my best friend. And we've got on drums Rick Lano, who was in a band called the Flying Burrito Brothers, the last version of that the last few years. And he's just a perfect drummer for Poco. And a guy, Tom Hampton, is an old friend who's playing guitar and mandolin and stuff like that with us now. and it's just so much fun. Everyone in the, it's not like some of the versions of the band where there was a lot of angst. This band it's four friends who love playing together and play really good. The band sounds really great, and so I miss it, and I can't wait to go back out and do it as long as I can still make it.
I was going to ask you, what qualities does this current lineup of the band have that may not have existed in the early original lineup? And I think you might have already answered that. That tenseness between isn't there. It's more of a relaxed feel.
Absolutely. There's no anger. No one's angry at anybody, and no biting fingernails and that kind of stuff. It's just, let's go have fun, and we have fun every night. And it's different every night because we're not so structured that, every solo is note for note, what was on the record. We leave, and like Rosa Cimarron, we leave lots of room for Tom and I to go off and experiment and ad lib, and we have fun, and it's different every night. And I think that's part of what keeps people coming, is because it's not just the same thing every night, same number of songs and same arrangements. And if I had to play Rosa Cimarron exactly like the record from 1976 every night, I think I'd go crazy, because as a musician you get better, and as an arranger, all this kind of you evolve, and so on songs like that, it's really neat to take it to another level. But then on songs like Crazy Love, it is what it is. You can't go ad-libbing on Crazy Love. And my friends in America, I understand that Horse with No Name, you can't go off. You got to do it just like the record. So I understand when people do that or take it easy. So I understand that. But there are times when it's really nice. Quite a few songs where you can just have fun and be artistic that evening.
And what about recording-wise, Rusty? Is there anything in the planning stages there? Another Poco album, or maybe even another solo record?
I don't know. I'm not sure. At this point, I think what it turns into is a vanity project, because everyone I know, we tour with Firefall and Pure Prairie League and Atlanta Rhythm Section and Orleans and, a lot of bands from our era. And they release records. But what happens, it's like the last Poco record, there's a certain audience in the shows. It's not a big enough audience. You can't compete with Taylor Swift or any of Justin Timberlake. Come on, And so what you're doing really is it's a project for the fans, the hardcore fans, and it's a vanity thing, And I understand that, and it's fun to have your songs recorded and go. And I have a record deal, so I can go record if I have the inkling to do that, and. But at this point in my life, I don't see how it makes sense, because, I'm not going to sell 100,000 records, 50,000 records. And in the past, when we were doing our thing, we never sold less than 300,000 or 400,000, and Legend sold 1 million, as you know, or sold a couple million. So, it just turns into a vanity thing, and I'm not very vain at my age now, so. I love new songs. What I may do is what a lot of people do now are singles or EPs, and so the label would love for me to do it. I'd like to go in probably. Usually at Christmas time we go in and record, and so I might go this Christmas and record a couple new songs that they'll release, but there's not going to be a Poco album or another solo record. I think I nailed it with that one, so I'm proud. I'm happy and proud of that.
Yeah, fair enough too. Hey, Rusty, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute honour speaking with you, and congratulations on the longevity and the success of this wonderful band. And we hope once the world is back to normal again, we do finally get to see you down here.
Oh yeah, I would love to come to Australia. I'll do that flight anytime. So if the chance comes up, you'll see me.
We'll be here waiting.
All right, thanks, John.
All the best. Thanks, Rusty.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.